What's up, buttercups? Welcome to Mean Age Daydream with me, your bald and beautiful host, Brian McWilliams, here on the Lions of Liberty Network. It's a bit of a gloomy day here in LA. I'd say it's a dark day for many a city that is governed by leftist progressives, not only here in California, where I reside, but also in New York City. And that's going to be predominantly what we talk about today. Going to be the topics of Zohran Mamdani becoming mayor of New York and also Prop 50 passing here in California. I thought it's going to be short of breath today. I know it's a running joke. I once again have a cold from my kids, although I've been taking this supplement. It's a quercetin and I don't know, a bunch of other crap. It does seem to help. I'm not going to plug them or anything like that, but it seems to shorten the time I'm sick. Like I'm not getting really sick, which is good, but I have a little short of breath, which is annoying. So before we hop into things properly, I do want to remind you guys, you can get more content, daily rants, and bonus content like Degenerate Gamblers, Meme Wars, if you join our Patreon, patreon.com/Lions of Liberty or lionsofliberty.locals.com. And also, I have unbelievably exciting news, and apologies to those of you who already knew about this, tried to buy the game, and then were stymied because Amazon did some trickery, but my new game is here. Woke Word Wars. Yes, Woke Word Wars. It is an awesome card game, similar to Cards Against Humanity, but different. It is alterations in that there are trump cards in the game, which change the dynamic. You can play cards on other people's answers. You also can use between 1 and 3 hilarious answer cards. And of course, it's targeted towards mocking people that are on the left woke side of the spectrum. It's great fun. It is now live. You can find it on Amazon if you type in Woke Word Wars game, or you could go to wokewordwars.com and grab yourself a copy. It is live. It is set to deliver on November 16th is when the delivery date says now for Prime members. Otherwise, it'll take a little while longer to get to you, but you will have it by Christmas. And the funny thing was, this game went live dealing with all the tariffs. We were screwed with the tariffs by a week. We could have saved ourselves like $500 if this game had gotten to the port like a week earlier or a week later, I should say. But Amazon was like, it's here. The game's here. You can buy it. And I was like, everybody, guess what? The game's here. You can buy the game. And then they were like, nah, you can't buy the game. It's unavailable. So people got their orders in. Then other people who tried to buy it were like, you can't buy the game. And I think that was just because they were getting it out to the fulfillment centers across the country. So go ahead. You can buy it. It's going to be awesome. Let me know if you do, and I will blow you kisses, do some retweets and shout outs. So appreciate that, guys. Okay. So Mamdani, this mother effing Mamdani has become mayor of New York City. Now, the irony of this, right? Well, let me just say, first and foremost, it's shocking to see the greatest city in America, right? 250 years, possibly over the past 250 years, the greatest city in the world, arguably. The center of capitalism, the center of commerce. And some people argue, well, London still has a lot of power. They do. But when it comes to the governing financial city, the financial capital of the world, it has been New York City. There's a reason the stock exchange in there. There's a reason all these companies and corporations were based there despite the high taxes, because New York City was where you had to be. It defined you, right? As a company, as a brand, as an entity, New York City was where it's at. We have all these songs written about New York, the places where you can make your dreams come true. You can go from nothing to something. Oh, if you make it here, you can make it anywhere. Well, guys, that city has fallen so stupendously. And to think about the fact that this has happened over the past maybe 80 years, the fall of one of the greatest cities in America, from the point where it was anybody can make it, you have to have your company there. This is where the biggest and best deals are made. This is where the most successful people live, to the point where a avowed communist, essentially, mayor, he won't say it outright, I'll say it, he's a communist, has come into power, has preached all of the most idiotic, easily disproved, failed socialist measures, can get elected is incredible. incredible to me. And look, there's a lot of problems with that, which I don't want to overlook, right? The fact that this is possible shows you the issues that we have in society, and especially in big blue governed cities. Because let's not forget the irony, and I titled this episode "The Irony of Mamdani" for a specific reason. And that is because when you look at the several ironies involved here, number one is the irony that New York could get to this point. And that is because of the blue governance of New York City. What do I mean by that one? And also writ large, actually, I guess the socialist implications, the over-regulatory state that we live in under the United States government. These are all factors that built into the fall of New York City. The cost of living is absolutely out of control. Same thing here in Los Angeles, same than all these big blue cities. You have costs of living that have skyrocketed because of obviously massive government overspending. You have problems with the entire pipeline as far as getting food through, the regulations that are involved there, the prices of meat, the prices of eggs, the price of vegetables, all these things have skyrocketed. Now, the majority of that is in fact due to government involvement, overregulation, problems shipping across state lines, the centralization of power, the centralization of meat and dairy farming, the centralization of all these things have led to a high increase in prices and a shortage of supply. So that's one issue we can address. The other thing is you look at the amount of people that are, in fact, yes, disenfranchised because during COVID especially, which who are we to blame in COVID? Well, number one, the federal government, right? The worldwide government, if you want to go a step farther, but also in deep blue cities, those governing bodies went so far beyond what should have been acceptable to people. I mean, I live in Commie, California here, where Governor Newsom, dictator Governor Newsom here, he had overstepped his boundaries, and the similar thing happened in New York and Michigan, where these mayors made themselves kings. They shut down businesses, they locked people in their homes, they disenfranchised individuals, they disenfranchised entrepreneurs, small business owners, and instead they centralized all of the money and the wealth in the biggest corporations, the grocery stores, the Amazons of the world, the too big to fail entities that everybody was now forced to use for 3 years. 3 years. We were forced to go down this path. Even when things started to open up, in the bluest of blue cities and states, these shutdowns were overpronounced and elongated. Add to that, teachers unions, right? Because teachers unions were big backers of Mamdani, big backers of Prop 50 here in California. That was also a big issue, right? So you had a massive separation between people that were no longer just the poorest versus the richest, but now everyday people as well, right? Your middle class, your lower middle class, even your, I mean, honestly, arguably upper middle class got squeezed. So you have these people that are disenfranchised because of the governance of big blue Democrats. So there is a deep irony in that these people don't understand or see that all of the problems that have led to their current situation are the fault of the policies that they are now embracing. And they've gone down a road where they're embracing a man who is promising to do even worse policies, even more of the things that created the issue. A prime example of this is rent, right? In New York City, Zohran Mamdani wants to freeze the rent. He promised that he was going to do that. He was going to put, rent hikes, rent freezes on everything. Now, time and time again, and Argentina is a prime example of this, actually. Time and time again, what we've seen is that if you freeze rents, right, and we have that here in rent-controlled apartments in California, it shortens the amount of apartments available. Because number one, people stay in those apartments forever. People that can move out and should move out and need to move out stay in those apartments. They squat in them for decades, even though they have an income that is well beyond the means that they should be able to buy another apartment, move out, give it to somebody who should theoretically be able to afford it and has a lower income. They don't. There's no measures in place to force these people out. You can't do it. And on top of that, especially during COVID, they added on protections for these people where you couldn't kick them out even if they weren't paying rent. So now you have people that are squatting, they're not paying rent. So all the incentive is removed from people who actually want to rent buildings. You have on top of that, the regulatory environment created by the red tape involved with buildings, with creating things, with environmental studies, with zoning laws that prohibit builders from creating them. On top of that, you have this emphasis from these big blue states on, well, you have to have rent-controlled apartments built into any new apartment building. So right off the bat, you have unbelievable costs in creating new housing. You have built-in units that are going to lose you money, guaranteed. They are a drain. So every other apartment now has to be twice as expensive to make up for that loss. Then you now have a rent freeze. What does a rent freeze do? Well, a rent freeze means that you cannot upgrade. Well, you could, but why would you? You have no incentive to upgrade, to maintain, to increase capacity. None of this stuff applies to these apartments because the incentive is removed from builders, from renters. So what ends up happening? A shortage, because now you have no incentive to create new apartments. You have no incentive to upgrade. This is the problem that has been borne out. And in Argentina, they eliminated rent control. And guess what happened? A boom in availability, a boom in building. So Mamdani, off the basis of just the concept, is selling a failed proposition. And I'm trying to stay on track here. I was going to go into the ignorance. We'll get to the ignorance of voters later. So that's number one. The rent freeze is a joke. And also, it's illegal. You can't do it. Zohran Mamdani has no control over rent. That's actually up to an independent New York commission that governs what rent control is, what the rent increases can be. This has nothing to do with him. So he would have to actually fight the New York Constitution or fight the New York legislature to get this power. So strike that off. The irony is that he can't do what he's trying to do anyway. And if he did, the people that would be most affected, aka younger people that need rent-controlled apartments, in theory anyway, these people are actually going to be hurt the most. They don't understand that. Number two, he's promising, free buses. Also, not under his power or purview. And granted, he did nothing to address this during the campaign trail, but people are too stupid to understand that. He kept brushing it off. Free buses. No, the mayor doesn't create that either. He doesn't govern that either. The MTA, the Metro, I think it's the Metro Transit Authority in New York, actually controls what goes on with buses. And the MTA head said, you can't pay for this. There's no way. It has to go through them, and it has to be balanced out with budget measures. What are the budget measures that he thinks he's going to even this out on? Oh, well, he's going to impose a flat tax on corporations. He's going to tax the rich at a higher percentage. Number one, he can't even increase the taxes on corporations. It's also not under his purview. That has to go through the legislature as well. If he increases tax on the wealthiest, all that's going to happen is that New York's tax rate, which is just below Jersey right now, your next door neighbor, is going to mean that it's going to go higher than New Jersey, which all that means is that everybody's going to flee to New Jersey. All your high wealth individuals are going to leave the city. It's already been happening, by the way. Now it's going to happen in mass. You're going to have corporations leave. If you impose a new tax on people that are already paying out the ass in New York City, you're going to have more flight. And there's already discussion about Miami being a new financial capital of the United States because of this. Already Miami's become a tech capital for the exact same reasons. You're going to have corporations say, this is not worth it anymore. We can't sit here and be bent over and have this incredibly high tax rate imposed on us on top of what we're already paying, on top of the amount of money we have to pay our citizens, on top of the amount of corporate tax we have to pay, on top of the amount of payroll taxes, all these other things, tax on tax on tax. There's reaches a point where they just say enough is enough. We can't make ends meet here. And if we increase the cost on consumers, they're not going to pay it. I mean, it's similar to what's going on in the entertainment business, right? When Hollywood used to be the mecca of filmmaking. Do you know what it is now? It's a wasteland. I have so many friends here in the business of entertainment who can't find jobs because the jobs have gone elsewhere. They're going overseas. They're going to different states. They're going, literally, I have a friend right now who's in Ireland because a game show he is working on, a game show would cost twice as much to make here in the United States. So it's cheaper for them to create a show, fly everybody to Ireland, the entire crew. Well, not the entire crew, but I mean, my friend does research for creating questions for game shows. If you can't find a local Irishman to do it, I don't know, but they're flying out. Maybe a union thing. They're flying out the entire crew. They're putting the entire crew up in hotels for a month. That means you're paying for meals, you're paying for flights, you're paying for hotels, you're paying for production costs, you're paying for the cost of the talent. It's cheaper to do it in Ireland than here in Hollywood where everybody lives. You don't have to pay for all these costs, but it's still cheaper because these imbeciles in the legislature continue to tax to death the cow, They're killing the goose that laid the golden egg. I know I say tax the cow. Well, I was thinking, the cow makes milk. Anyway, like I said, I'm a little slow today. I'm a little out of it. Similar in New York City, it's going to hit that wall. The Hollywood industry kept pushing woke bullshit on people until the point where audiences stopped watching it and stopped paying for it. And now they're finally making a shift. You do reach a point where your company cannot exist under the current circumstances. New York City is going down that path if it's permitted. Like I said, all of Mamdani's plans cannot be implemented. They can't be. Flat out. He has run on an entire premise of lies, and a failed premise, like another failed premise that he's run on, is government-owned markets. Now, they've tried this before. Specifically, I think in Minnesota, they've tried this most recently, because Minnesota also super blue, super woke. I think they've, their new mayor, I don't know if this guy won, Omar Fatah. Again, he's Somali, because they have a huge Somali population in Minnesota, or Minneapolis, I should say. And I think he might win too. But they tried to do this in the past, and all that happens is, predictably, the same thing that always happens. When you create government-run markets, you sell products at below cost. What happens is that everybody goes in, they buy up all the stock because it's cheaper than anywhere else, and then you don't have stock to replace it because there are no checks and balances on supply and demand. There's no cost increase possible to stop people from buying these products when they become cost prohibitive. There's the exact same reason that I can't stand when people talk about quote unquote price gouging when it comes to circumstances where you have a shortage of supply or an emergency. When you put a price cap on something, all that means is that it becomes cost prohibitive and thus impossible for retailers to restock because they have no incentive to do so. They can't sell the product at under market cost. They're not going to simply take it on the chin and lose money because you want them to and because you impose a false price cap on something that goes against market forces. These stores have failed. Right now, the stores that had opened are all shuttered. They're all bankrupt. They have no stock on the shelves. Why do you think there's no stock in the stores in Venezuela? Because they put price caps on things in the market, and then nobody wanted to make those things because the raw goods cost more than the materials that they're going to dig, or more than the money they can actually make back by creating the goods. So you have empty shelves. The same thing will happen in New York City if this idiotic premise is tried. You can't make up the budget shortfall to fund it, again, because you can't just levy a flat tax on people and expect it to make up the difference. It's not going to work. And the deepest irony, I think, of all this with Mamdani is, like I said, the young. And I saw the voter results. And, something like 82% of young women voted for Zohran Mamdani. And the majority of the youth vote, of course, voted for him. Is that the youth seem to have no understanding or education as far as the implications of who gets hurt the most when socialism is put into place. It's not the people that have already made their money. And you see this play out in all of these other countries that have embraced socialism after periods of wealth, right? And you look to everybody likes to say, oh, Europe's done it. Well, no, Europe tried it, places like Sweden and Denmark. Well, they're taking on the chin. They've actually changed policies because the reason they were able to do that was that they had such largesse, especially after the wars, right? Because a lot of these places that actually dealt in arms, they made a ton of money. Then they said, okay, the people got so wealthy, they said, okay, well, we'll introduce some socialist measures. The people that get impacted by the socialist measures the most are the people that then bear the brunt of those consequences of policy. When things start to get short, when healthcare starts to be rationed, when food starts to get rationed, when apartments start to get rationed, the people that bear the brunt of that are not the people that were wealthy that created this momentum to begin with. The people that bear the brunt of it are the young. In New York City, all of these young people, these young women that voted to put these practices into play, they are the ones that are going to be paying far higher prices for groceries, far higher prices for taxes. Because look, guys, the taxes are going to run out on the wealthy when they flee. And eventually, what's going to happen? They're going to expand taxes on everyone. They're either going to put more taxes, more sales tax in place, which impacts everybody, but especially who? The people that make lesser amounts of money. Because at the grocery stores, when it comes to rent, an increase of 10% in your rent, even though he's talking about freezing the rent, guys. Yeah, well, good luck, because there's not going to be apartments available to you. So these people are going to have to look for rent, outside, either move or find a way to make ends meet, you're not going to be able to pay it. Maybe there's going to be black markets where people are going to be buying tiny shoe boxes, closets in New York City apartments and paying $1,200 for those because those are the only things left. And you do see that, right? When you have policies like this in play, which make these crazy prices in not unavailable stocks of X, Y, and Z, you name it, you're going to have black markets spring up where you're actually going to be paying more for those services, but at least you'll be able to get them. These people do not have a historical context. They're not teaching it in stores, in stores. They're not teaching it in schools. Why? Well, obviously because the unions are very Marxist in their own. The teachers' unions, as I said, supported Prop 50, support Zohran Mamdani. These forces are Marxist. They want to push this in play, and they don't give a damn. They're not going to teach you the evils. They'll teach you the evils of Hitler. They'll do 50 pages on Hitler. They won't teach you the evils of Pol Pot. They won't teach you the evils of Mao. They won't teach you the evils of these socialist dictators that come into play and what the results of that are. As I mentioned, Venezuela is a real-time example of what can happen. What they should be teaching is the benefits of capitalism, of how these things solve problems, of market forces finding solutions, and the ability to create a market that serves a need by lowering the cost of entry. Lower the cost of buildings, and you will have cheaper apartments. And on the same note, I've talked about this before, when it comes to illegal immigration, this is a huge problem nobody wants to talk about. The fact that Section 8 housing has been given to illegals reduces the amount of Section 8 housing available to the general population that actually needs it, that are citizens. In apartments, if you've got 1 million illegals in a city, like Los Angeles, for example, and they are getting all the apartments and they're getting that stock. Well, now you have an issue because those people are taking up space that should be reserved or could be reserved for people that are paying taxes, that are citizens here, that are taking part in the actual community. And you're just destroying what should be an open market system. One more thing on Mamdani too, I just want to throw out here. I find it incredible that the media, actually, I don't find it incredible. It's part and parcel because the same thing happened with Prop 50 here. The media did such an abysmal job of pressuring him on actual policy positions. We saw this play out the same way with Kamala Harris. Now, she obviously didn't win. She was so unlikable, but Mamdani, for all his faults, was a gifted, personable guy when it came to his campaign, right? He comes across as, likable, I'm just doing this for everybody, yada, yada, yada. He was good at that. But the media's job as the quote-unquote, fifth estate is supposed to pressure him on answering the hard questions. What is the policy? How are you going to pay for this? How do you get around the legislature? How do you get around the fact that this is illegal to actually push through? What do you think is going to happen? Why do you think this will work here when it has failed in every other instance across the globe? Why would it work here now? And they did it. They absolutely abdicated their role because they're cheering this man on. They think that this is a good for the city. It's going to be catastrophic. I mean, absolutely catastrophic. And one of the things that I do want to point out too is that this may have been a circumstance. And I was talking to some relatives I have who live in New York and voted for Mamdani. I try to keep my criticism in my private messages with them civil. I may have dropped the R word a few times, but the point remains that it was Mamdani versus Andrew Cuomo, who has, of course, been disgraced. And it is funny to me, though, that they still wouldn't vote for Cuomo because, of course, Cuomo has been tossed out into the gutter and for good reason. But the media turned on him real fast after holding him up as the God King during COVID, right? Feeding him, F-E-T-E, feeding him, not feeding him, feeding him as though he was the next coming of Jesus Christ, risen and saving humanity from this virus, to the point where he was being thrown out there as a presidential candidate. How quickly they forget and refuse to vote for him and instead go for an avowed socialist who's promising you nothing and has, limited experience. He was I think a member of the New York Senate for some time, limited experience governance, and is, by the way, an embodiment, another irony, an embodiment of everything you hate. Mamdani is a champagne socialist. The guy's parents are unbelievably wealthy. He just had a wedding, like this lavish, crazy wedding, I think in Uganda or something like that, costing, domestically, I don't know what it cost, $500,000 or something, millions there. The guy is everything you despise as far as somebody with absolute privilege. He is among the elite, the wealthiest 1%, and yet comes in with these batshit ideas, which, as mentioned, will not impact him. He can put all these crazy, crazy policies into place. Maybe if he gets, if he can fight through the legislature on it, if he puts them into policy, in these policies in a position, Mamdani is not going to bear the brunt of that. He's got his ivory tower. He's got his $200,000 a month or a year apartment place that his parents have funded. And well, his salary in New York City was $150,000. But he's not going to be shopping at the local market that has nothing on the shelves. He's not going to be eating cans of beans like the rest of you. No, he'll be just fine. He's got the money. He's got the wealth. He's got the privilege. He's not worried about it. But these people went down that road, possibly because they believed the lies, possibly because free stuff is just too strong in a lure for people, and they never question what makes it free. Somebody's got to pay for it. Otherwise, it's slavery. They go, okay, well, if it's him or Cuomo, I guess, we can't vote for Cuomo. He's evil. Fair enough. What is wrong with the Democrats? They couldn't put up a decent candidate to run against Zohran Mamdani, where this guy can actually get these votes. Same thing with the Republicans. You did have Giuliani in there. I think Giuliani's a joke, but you had at least somebody that had won in the past. You couldn't find anybody better than Curtis Sliwa. I mean, this guy he looks like a nutball. He's out there with his, what is he, a member of the Angels or whatever the hell they were called. He's out there with all these pictures of him looking like he's pretending to go out in G.I. Joe military parade style with his red beret on. This is the best you could do? That's mind-boggling, especially in today's age where things have gone so off the rails. You couldn't find a reasonable, decent candidate. I mean, here, at least in California, there's some hope. We've got, Rick Caruso, who had been campaigning and running against Karen Bass for mayor and came pretty close. He's now, I think, going to run for governor. There's another guy named Steve Hilton who's running. There's people that are at least reasonable candidates here in California, because Gavin Newsom's going to be out and is definitely going to run for president. We'll transition to that in a minute. But you've got the biggest city in America. Nobody from the financial industry would want to run. Nobody thought we should try to save what we've got here. We're just going to roll over and let this guy do it. I mean, that's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. I'm not surprised this happened, by the way. As mentioned, the ignorance of voters is astounding. The historical ignorance, as far as the negative impacts of socialism and communism, is astounding. And the fact that these people are just easily manipulated is astounding. That's where we'll transition to California here. I look at this Prop 50 vote, and I think everybody should know what it is, but Prop 50 was basically to allow gerrymandering in California. We had an independent districting commission. It was one of the best things California did. Arnold Schwarzenegger, I think, had spearheaded this when he ran as a Republican, and he was out there campaigning hard. He said, look, you can't do this. This is basically like gerrymandering. We have an independent districting commission. He's right. Why would you want to go back and put it in the hands of the politicians when you had something that was good and decent? It wasn't perfect, but it was better than what we got now, which is pure Democrat control. And I hope this bites them in the ass. It probably won't, but I hope this somehow bites them in the ass and they lose seats. But for people to go down this road, it reminds me, somebody had tweeted at me, and I apologize, I can't remember your name, Chris something. But he had pointed out that Gavin Newsom should have been recalled. And similarly, there was a campaign showing how easily manipulated California voters are. And of course, California is 60% Democrat. It's it's slowly transitioning because of how badly the governing has done here. Again, the insanely high cost of living, homeless everywhere, corruption, rampant abuse of the systems, when it comes to welfare, when it comes to homeless, money being stolen from NGOs. All of these problems exist and have just destroyed California and just been raping the middle class. Just awful. But you had a chance to get the guy out. What happened is that Larry Elder, who I respect Larry Elder, right? He was a radio personality. This is a black man whose father was a janitor who grew up in not poverty, but certainly not in the middle class even, made something of himself, is a conservative / Republican, became a popular talk show host, ran for governor against Newsom. And what did our media do? Well, they said, you know what? We're going to paint him as the quote, and this is a quote from the LA Times, the black face of white supremacy. Now, if Larry Elder didn't run, I wonder if Gavin Newsom would have been recalled. If there was a general centrist Democrat that ran instead of this piece of garbage, Gavin Newsom, who just lies upon lies upon lies, I think he would have been recalled because at least he would have had another Democrat. They couldn't have had the narrative that this is a battle against the racist GOP. This is a battle against Trump. He's a battle, all these things, because I can't remember if Trump had endorsed him, but Larry Elder certainly was a backer of Trump. If not for that manipulation in the media and in the mainstream narrative that gets parroted throughout our uber leftist, media and academia here, would Gavin Newsom have been gone? And similarly with Prop 50, I told you guys how the lies about Prop 50 were propagated and that this is a temporary measure and we have to fight Trump, stop Trump's stealing of democracy. No, what happened here was actually an affront to democracy. And Arnold Schwarzenegger said this exact same thing. You are destroying democracy by enabling one side of the political spectrum to completely run roughshod over 40% of California by eliminating this independent redistricting commission. You are buying into this narrative that somehow Gavin Newsom should be given more power. And all this was a pure ego play by Gavin Newsom to try to boost his chances when he runs for president. And he will be running, I guarantee it. But the idea that people just bought into this lie, and this expensive lie, $250 or $280 million special election lie, when Gavin Newsom has not funded the fire departments that are supposed to be taking care of things like the Palisades fire, which destroyed hundreds of thousands of acres of land, and lied to people about being able to rebuild, saying we're going to streamline the process so you can get your house cleared and rebuilt, and we're going to make it easy. 5 permits have been issued. Five. And it's been about a year. These people are just, they believe whatever garbage is shoveled into their mouths. I've never seen a more ignorant or easily manipulated voter base than people that are pure blue. And studies have borne this out too. Conservatives have a much wider variance in opinion, as do libertarians, as far as taking in different information, coming out with different answers or different narratives. There's a whole interesting graph which shows where the allowable opinion within these progressive voters is, and it's a very, very small swath. Even people that have quote unquote more open minds are still in a very, very slim portion. And that's the problem, is that it doesn't matter how many times, like for Zohran Mamdani, even if you tell people, look, this is not going to work out, it always ends badly. They're going to say, well, but yeah, we got to try something. We got to try it. It's the cost of living. It's like, the reason you're in this hole is because of the policies you're voting for. Similarly, in California, you've just enabled one of the most radical legislatures, one of the most radical political states to get more radical. And we're looking at the outcomes of those policies that have existed here, which ravage the state through COVID, through the homelessness, through the taxation policies, through transgenders. I mean, Mamdani also pledged $65 million to give anybody who wants to get transgender surgery that ability, and to even fly people in to have it for free. Like, what are we talking about? What kind of psychotic, insanity do you have to have where you don't question these things on a base level? And I ask myself, when it comes to Mamdani, what's the best and worst case scenario? Similar to Prop 50. And I've always, best case scenario for Prop 50 is that the Democrats get wrapped on the ass and somehow they lose seats. Probably not going to happen. With New York, what's the best and worst case scenario, right? Best case scenario, sad as it is that, well, the best case scenario is that Mamdani can't do anything. But then what you're going to see is that he's going to blame the state He's going to say it's not my fault, just like with everything. Well, communism really hasn't been tried. That's what we're going to see here. They're going to say that communism hasn't really been tried in New York, that the state's getting in the way, and they wouldn't let him go through with his policies, and that's why nothing's getting done. Okay, fair. That's probably the best case scenario, if we're being perfectly honest, for New York City. The worst case scenario is that somehow he gets it done. And then, as I talked about, you're going to see a flight of the rich. You're going to see a flight of big business. You're going to see all of the rent prices, all the available apartments dry up. You're going to see people either being homeless or fleeing New York City for other states because they have to, because there's no place to live. You're going to see the marketplaces, as I mentioned, dry up. And you're going to see the other grocery stores, by the way, get more expensive because the products are being sucked out that should be cheap and available in regular marketplaces. Well, now those are all going to be filtered through to these failing government stores. So now everything else at the other stores is going to be higher priced because now with no stores that are available with cheap goods, everybody's going to have to be forced to go to the more expensive stores, the Whole Foods or the bodega marketplaces. And let's see, maybe they'll put some price caps on those marketplaces and then they'll have shortages. You're going to see an absolute collapse of the city. Even though my relatives live there, I think that would be preferable to me because you have to have an illustration of what happens. You have to have a modern day US version of this to remind people what happens when you follow these communist manifestos, when you put these in actions, when you get in front of the free marketplace and say you're not allowed to function here. And the effects of that. It has to be so pronounced and powerful that people look at it, that historians write about it, and that finally Americans wake up again to what is going on here, and that you have to embrace individualism and entrepreneurship. You have to lower barriers for people to entry into the marketplace, to provide goods, to provide services, to build, to thrive, to create, to interact. You cannot have systems in place that prohibit that, or else all you're going to do is create squalor. And you're going to see that in New York City if Mamdani has his way. At least I pray it is so. All right. Well, there you go. Last thing, I got to jump on a work call in a minute, but last thing, a celebratory note, a high note on this dark day is that Teen Vogue, which is one of the most woke, garbage, youth brainwashing magazines out there, just slashed 75% of its staff. Now that's incredibly encouraging news. Obviously, Teen Vogue is based in New York because they're all based in New York. Maybe they're slashing staff knowing that they're not going to be able to function there anymore. But I like to think that Teen Vogue, having embraced all of the worst, wokest, wokewordwars.com, the wokewordwars.com wokest garbage of the left, including pushing transgenderism and radical feminism and, racism and everything. You got it. They had it. And targeted at the youth, which is a problem. Either the youth have woken up to the fact that this is pure garbage. And I have a lot of hope for the people that are coming up that are the youngest side of things, that they've really been burned badly enough that they're coming around to a new way of viewing the world. Either that's what it is, and that people are just sick of this and not clicking, which I think is what's happening. Or maybe the parents have gotten involved and they're not paying for Teen Vogue anymore. Because I doubt that these kids are paying for Teen Vogue subscriptions on their own. But it certainly makes you think that more than anything in modern day and age, the clicks are down, the advertisement is dried up, and that this magazine is failing because it has no merit anymore. Fingers crossed. All right. That's going to wrap it up, guys. Brighter days ahead, maybe darker days for New York City. Hopefully the darkest days for New York City. And maybe that great city will rebound once more. Thank you guys for tuning in. Remember, wokewordwars.com, or you can go check it out on Amazon. Appreciate you if you do give us some support there. I guarantee you will love this game. And it's so good. The game is so good that actually my partners in the game are both two liberal guys, which is really funny, who just played it. I threw the concept out at them. We did some trial runs of it before it was, it was just pieces of paper. And they said, this game's amazing. It's going to be a big hit. We want to invest and become part of the game. And they did. And they actually made the game a lot better because they helped me develop it, take it to the next level, make it really differentiated from the other offerings in the marketplace. So check it out, guys, and appreciate any support there. And of course, please do support the Lions of Liberty Network. We've got all our fantastic shows here. We're going to have a new politics show coming out as well. We have an independent feed for that too. And yeah, thank you. Click, subscribe, review. Wonderful. All right. From me, Brian McWilliams, from Zohran Mamdani on top of the Empire State Building, swinging at the planes of capitalism from the Lions of Liberty Network. Thank you for watching. Keep those electric eyes on me, babe. And keep that ray gun to my head. I'll talk to you later.